I'd like to call to order a Hayden City Council special meeting. It is Monday, May 2nd, 2022. It is now 5 p.m. And I'm going to ask our clerk to please do a roll call, please.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Here.
Council President Roeder?
Present. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Susie, who is the head of our Recreation Department, to lead us in the pledge, please. Susie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Susie. We have an agenda set for tonight, and we're going to move one of the item number 1, which is an executive session, down to between number 5 and 6 if we require it. I didn't want to have one. I didn't want to delay what we're moving into, which is the interview process. So I didn't want everybody to have to leave and maybe come back. So if we need to go back into executive session, we'll do that much later in the meeting. So with that, either Fonda or Brett are going to give us some instructions about tonight that we do need to follow. And who's up?
I'll start with just some basic things, just for the public. You have in front of you there the interview questions and also some 3 different categories as far as instructions for the interviews, which will be for you guys, and then instructions for the public that Councilmember Roeder will read, and then also for the candidates as they come in. Some may wonder the number of the candidates, at least from our last meeting, we had five different candidates, and there's only 3 here for interviews tonight. And so in the letter that we received from Nancy Lowry, she had requested if this did not go on to the governor, she did not want to be considered as a candidate at this level. So her name was taken off, and then also we know that Councilmember Satterfield also submitted a letter withdrawing his name as well from this process. And so that's why there are 3. We've set those up to allow you to have 40 minutes. So 30 minutes for the interview and then 10 minutes in between. And so each of the candidates are instructed to come. They will be in the hallway. And so some of the instructions that you will give here to the public relate to trying to keep the information and everything fair here. And the council does have copies of the questions, and you'll go through and ask those based on the red name in front. And so with that, I think there's further instructions from our city attorney that she'll go through.
So once I finish my explanation of what we're doing here tonight for the public and for council, just as a reminder, Council President Roeder, you have some instructions in the middle on this sheet to read to the public as soon as I finish. And then the instructions for the candidate, if you would read that to each candidate as they come in. So just to remind everyone and to reiterate what was in the posting for the paper, the duties of the mayor shall be the chief administrative official of the city, preside over the meetings of the city council, and determine the order of business subject to such rules as the council may prescribe. Have a vote only when the council is equally divided. Have the superintending control of all the officers and affairs of the city. Preserve order and take care that the ordinance of the city and provisions of this act are complied with and enforced. And that's Idaho Code 50-602. The mayor utilizes the city administrator for managing the day-to-day city operations. The abilities and qualifications of the mayor that the council will be looking for tonight. The mayor, serving as the head of the executive branch of our city government, should have leadership qualities that would inspire public support, professionalism, administrative skills, public speaking, and the ability to attract business and jobs. They need to be inclusive, transparent, and accountable. be able to preside over meetings, execute official documents as approved, serve in ceremonial roles on behalf of the city. They would need the ability to communicate, use a computer, understand budgets and numbers, ability to understand laws, ordinances, and codes, and declare emergencies as needed. Have the ability to interact well with other government officials, and this position, as you may all know, is part-time with a varied schedule depending on meetings and public responsibilities. As indicated, each candidate will have 30 minutes this evening, and there are 12 questions for each of them. There is an additional 10 minutes. The council will be allowed to ask a couple of follow-up questions as the answers are given for each question, but there's not a lot of follow-up. This is not designed for a debate. This is an interview process. I will be running a stopwatch on my phone, so I will give a 2-minute warning when we're at 28 minutes. And then if you go over 30 minutes into your questioning, then I will give you some incremental updates as to where you are in that so that we can stay on track and make sure every candidate has the same amount of time. Each candidate will then be invited in at the appropriate time. Does the council have any questions with regards to that process?
I do. We have 4 council members and we have 12 questions. So who's going to ask the question, and is it going to be in this sequence?
It's on the person who's asking the question is in red.
Oh, okay, because I originally looked at those from who submitted, and
Oh.
they did that, and this is different.
This
Okay.
is different. This
So
is who's
we're just
asking.
rotating in the same sequence.
Yeah,
Correct.
so those, we just started with you as acting mayor, council president, so, and then they just go like this.
Okay.
So, and so the names and those that are asking the questions don't relate to the questions that you submitted.
So we are not necessarily going to be asking the questions that we submitted. It's just a random, you ask this, this, this.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And for the public, the council members all submitted questions. They were vetted by Human Resources, by Brett, and by myself. They were reduced. There were a couple modifications at the request of council. And so this list has been confirmed as an appropriate list of questions by the city as well as council for this evening.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with my part. Cell phones are not allowed out in the council chambers, and for them to respect the process. We would ask that they do not leave before the first 2 are done. Number 2, the audience will not be asking questions. We will. The audience is not to react audibly or visibly with gestures, cheers, clapping, signs, etc., or you will be asked to leave, and we have 2 of our finest deputies back there.
They're on cell phone patrol also, so watch out.
You are to act as quiet observers. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask before we start here. And I just want to make sure, because it's part of the process that is not really thoroughly defined. And so I think having clarity as we move forward is really important. So I'd like to first ask, I read in Sunday's paper that the headlines said Roger Satterfield on Friday officially withdrew from the interim mayor race. So I just want to make sure that that is true. Councilmember Satterfield.
You've seen my letter.
So if you would be kind enough to just give us a yes or no.
As I said, you've seen my letter.
Okay, then I would like to make a motion. The motion is that in the event that we have a tie tonight, that only the 3 people that are being interviewed tonight and that Nancy Taylor, who is asked to then be considered by the governor, only those 4 names go forward. And this is a process that I'm asking because they're going through the interview process. Roger is not. So to move forward on this, my motion specifically is this, that the only 4 names that can go forward for the governor to consider to choose from, if in the event that we have a tie, because what happens is we have no mayor to break the tie, but we have 4 council members who will vote. There could possibly be a tie. So do I hear a second on my motion?
I would like to discuss it first.
Well, we usually have a second and then discuss it. If we don't have a second, then there's no discussion.
Council President Roeder, you can also reserve that for after the interviews if you wish, and bring that issue up again. That's why we put on the agenda the action item number 4, appointment of mayor if impasse, move to next agenda item. So we did include that on the agenda if you would like to reserve that for later after the interviews. It's just a suggestion.
So then the other question I'd like to ask, are there any council members that are going to recuse themselves as part of this process? And if so, what is your justification? So we will have everybody voting. Then I'd like to ask our legal counsel that does every council member have a duty to vote on this issue, on voting for a mayor?
Absent bias, conflict of interest, as we've discussed before and you've received legal opinions on, they have an obligation to perform their duties as council members.
So that would be a yes, that they do have a duty to vote unless there's a conflict of interest.
Or express bias that's evaluated at the dais, which could happen, but they have an obligation to participate in the process.
And could you repeat what you said about the bias?
Oh, if there was an allegation of bias that needed to be dealt with while you're on the dais in a public meeting to flesh it out, that could be another reason that they wouldn't participate, but
In what code and Idaho statute is that?
I'm not hearing any of that. It's under the Transparent and Ethical Government Statute.
Okay, so you're saying it does exist?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that, so in theory, if I get this right, is that we could be at a tie, the governor will then choose, and that Roger will also be considered. Is that true?
No, Roger withdrew his application.
So he's saying that he would not be considered by the governor. That's what I want to know.
Well, I sent you all an opinion with regards to that question earlier today, expressing my suggestion if Roger is withdrawn, which my understanding is that he is completely withdrawn, he's participating in the process tonight and would not be considered then moving forward if the process goes to the governor.
So for clarification, if Roger were to vote tonight, and it did cause a tie, which allowed him to be considered by the governor?
I just said he will not be considered by the governor.
Okay, that's all, I just want to make sure. There's some concern about the process.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Fonda.
Okay, then
In that,
I don't have all the facts.
I don't believe that we can tell the governor what he is or is not going to do, because if it goes to the governor, he will set up his own process, and he has the authority to do what he wants to do. So I'm a little cautious about we saying certain things when it's going to be totally up to the governor on how he does the process.
As indicated before, we have been instructed to do as much as we possibly can internally to appoint an interim mayor. If you are unsuccessful in appointing an interim mayor, part of the reason for the remainder of this agenda is for you to have the ability to have an action item to give direction with regards to which applicants are going to the governor. So if that's why I had suggested maybe Council President Roeder move his motion to after the interviews are conducted so that you can deliberate on that action item.
But doesn't the governor have the option of picking someone who doesn't apply?
I believe that he is the governor. However, it has been suggested that we do as much of the process as we possibly can so that we can submit an applicant pool to the governor.
And I agree with that totally. I just want to make sure we're not, I want to be comfortable that we're not trying to tell the governor what to do.
I understand.
Do we need to clarify his intent?
So,
So I guess may I ask one more
please,
question of Councilman Satterfield? So Councilman Satterfield, I guess I would need to ask you then, with the withdrawal of your application, are you going to request if there's an impasse tonight to be considered if the process goes to the governor?
I guess my answer to that is I've stated in writing that I have withdrawn my application, and that should speak for itself.
Okay.
I have a question for Council Member Satterfield, please. So are you saying that the possibility is still exists in your mind that the governor could pick you even though you have officially withdrawn?
Again, I do not pretend, nor will I pretend to tell the governor what to do. The governor has the power to do whatever he wants to do. I have submitted a withdrawal of my application for interim mayor. And to continue on with this questioning, why don't we get on with the interviews of the applicants? That's what we're here for.
Second.
Thank you. I just want to determine, where he's at this point, because we're moving, I want to move forward, but I also like to know, if we get a tie, what happens? And I think that the public would like to know that, because we have individuals that are coming here tonight and are going through the interview process, and I want to respect that, so. All right, with that, unless there's any other questions, let's go on with the process, please. Can we have our first applicant, please? And I don't know who it is.
So
Oh, there we go.
in this as well, just so you know, there was a random choosing the order of candidates. So basically took the names, Sean took, I think, something off the computer that was a random number generating. So it happens that their first names are in alphabetical order. So don't read anything into that. It was a random pick.
And Council President Roeder, I will not start the timer until you've finished giving instructions to the applicants.
Great. And again, none of us knew the names in what order that they were going to come in.
So the order is Alan Davis, Ian Cosby, and then Scott Forsell.
Oh, where are we going to have them?
They're going to stand at the podium right there, yeah. We
Great.
thought, and we removed the computer so that it wasn't blocking.
Point of order. I just want to go back to the question of Councilman Satterfield. If there is a chance that he is in the running with the governor, then is there a bias here on the questioning of our candidates?
So I guess I can, my anticipation was if you end up at an impasse somehow, you're going to have gone through this interview process. You will then know where you are with regards to these three applicants, and then you could deliberate and give direction to me as to which step to take next. Initially, I need an action from you to even go to file a petition with district court to get an order from the judge, basically indicating that this is going to go to the governor's office. I was hoping in that process, you as counsel could be as specific as possible with regards to the affidavit that you would need to sign and which candidates you would be putting forward in that process. So the hope was that depending on what happens here, if there's an impasse, we can then move to the next stage where you can make a decision on what the next step in the process is. If you impasse on that, at least then I have enough, you have tried hard enough to select yourselves that at least I then could, in good faith, sign an affidavit in support of that petition. But I'm hoping you will be able to give direction with regards to what happens next. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready. Susie. Thank you. Hello. We do this for everybody. I assume we want you to give your name and where you live, so I'm still going to ask it, so.
Maybe.
I'm Alan Davis. My address is 8537 North Lockwood Court, Hayden, Idaho 83835.
I know that's redundant because we have your application, but have it. Okay, I have a few things that I need to read before we begin. We thank you for your interest in serving the community as mayor. We, as the city council, will be conducting these interviews and may or may not make a decision tonight. The order of interviews was by random selection. You will have about 30 minutes for 12 questions, about 2.5 minutes per question, and so gauge your answers accordingly. There may be follow-up questions that will not count against your time. All 3 candidates will receive the same 12 questions. After your interview, we would ask that you go back into the hall and not discuss your interview with any of the other candidates. After all the interviews are done, you are welcome to come back into the council chambers. So with that, let's get started. I guess I've got the first question.
Can I ask a question before we start?
Sure.
So are you asking me to stay for the remainder of the evening?
That's up to you.
Yeah, that's up to you. If you want to, after all the interviews are done, you want to come back in and we're going to talk about and deliberate. You can be, we want this as open as possible. So
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So people can hear and public and the candidates. So
Thank you.
are you ready? Now, we have Fonda's timing. She's going to do the 30, and once I ask the question, the clock's going to be starting. So
And I will give you a 2-minute warning. At 2 minutes, I'll say 2 minutes.
are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your background and leadership experience that you feel qualifies you to be the mayor of Hayden.
All right. Before I answer directly, I want to thank the council. It is my absolute honor to be considered by you to work for our citizens in a new capacity. I served my country in uniform for 27 years, retiring as a naval officer, where I led people from all walks of life with integrity and transparency. And I know I can continue serving like that as your mayor if given the chance. To your question, and would you mind repeating it,
Yeah,
please?
I'll be glad to. Tell us a little bit about your background and leadership experience that you feel qualifies you to be the mayor of Hayden.
Thank you. So primarily, if we're talking about leadership experience, I'm going to have to default to my time in the Navy. I was a naval officer for 16 years. The smallest group of sailors I led was 50, and the largest was 200. The last job I held, I think, excellently mirrors this opportunity to be the mayor. In the capacity of my last job, we had human resources and HR-related programs like equal opportunity laws, training, et cetera. We had finance and budgeting, operations and maintenance. And no, we didn't maintain roads. We maintained electronic equipment, big radars and antennas and things, but the concepts are the same. There's preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance. And again, there's just a huge parallel there. I apologize. I'll also point out that while running a city is certainly absolutely 100% not like being in the military, and I almost, to be honest with you, hate drawing back on it because I'd like my work that I've done for the city in the last 10 years to kind of stand on its own, to be honest with you. But in that capacity, I guess I've led planning and zoning since the unexpected departure. Prior to that, I was the vice commissioner for that commission, and prior to that, obviously I collaborated with the group. We always collaborate. It's a very much a team effort. I led children as a soccer coach for Hayden for 7 seasons. I had a wonderful time, whether they were 10s, 12s, or 14s. Reaching back deeper into my experience, when I had my retirement speech from the Navy, I said it's almost impossible. It's like describing the stars in the sky to somebody that hasn't seen them. The leadership challenges and the stress of operating in all parts of the world under the highest tensions, when literally you're pulling up to coasts of people that want to kill you. It's a funny thing. Parlaying that into mayor, I guess what I could say is I've been tested in what I assume will be a much harder environment than being mayor. And I hope that answers your question.
Ed, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis, for basically putting yourself into this position tonight and for applying to help the city. And you kind of touched on it there, but what is the role of a mayor?
I wrote notes just so I wouldn't do what I did in the first question and start rambling, sorry. So I see the mayor as the executive branch of the city, leading a city staff of about 35 people in the case of Hayden, and also getting inputs from the various commissioners that volunteer for the city. I don't think it's the mayor's job to run the city. We have a city administrator and we have city staff. They're tenured. I have great confidence working with them over the last 10 years that they know what they're doing. So mayor's job is not to come in and micromanage departments. However, collaboration is needed, decisions are made, a voice needs to be given to a city. The mayor fills many roles.
Okay.
My turn. I'd like to say thank you also. It's very important to build good relationships as mayor and to handle difficult relationships positively. How do you build positive relationships and handle difficult situations? Please give us an example of how you've handled relationships positively in prior positions.
I guess I'll draw on, is it 6 or 7 years in planning and zoning? Up until a few years ago, honestly, there wasn't a lot of that. But as the city's dealing with its growth and some changes are being thrown out as development is happening, we've had some rather spirited discussions with our citizens. And as a staff, or as a council, or as a committee, I apologize, we haven't always agreed. But I'm sure if you talk to any of the commissioners that are on planning and zoning right now, they'll tell you that we run an extremely collaborative approach where we respect each other's differences. And I don't think an angry word's ever been said amongst us in all those years. When the citizens have addressed us, obviously there's a limit to the back and forth we have, and we do appreciate everyone's sharing their concerns. But again, in all those times, never have lashed out or taken it personally, as I've seen other commissioners, unfortunately. So I believe in that capacity. Again, I've been well tested, and I believe that regardless of what comes up, we can find a way to work together and get the business of the city done, put the city ahead of our personal interests.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for applying. Could you give us an example of a problem you had while in a leadership position and how you solved it?
It's funny, there's just so many things in my head. Again, if you'd been in my shoes a decade ago, every day was there was something. Boy. I guess rather than give a specific example, I'm just going to say that it's really impossible to be in a high-stress leadership position for close to 2 decades. There's always something. It could be someone's family. It could be work, people not, I've seen stuff I don't even want to say in public. I mean, broken families, deployments that came on the heels of a deployment where we just came in and somebody got yanked to another. I apologize if my response is vague, but again, it's kind of almost asking me to describe the universe. It's such a Yeah, I'll just leave it at that, I guess. Yeah, all right, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, my turn. Why do you think people like to live in Hayden? What is it that you think they like the most, and how can we preserve that?
Well, it'd be kind of tough for me to speak for everyone in Hayden, of course, but I can tell you what attracted us when we settled here 10 years ago, and we had barely been to Idaho. We'd passed through, had done a lot of research. We'd picked out 3 cities in the United States that we wanted to settle in, and obviously this one won. I think our close proximity to the outdoors and to the things that it affords us, the clean air, the clean water, are top on the list. We are, at least by stereotype, not over-governed like some states are, not overtaxed. I went fishing with my brother a few weeks ago in the Yakima River near Ellensburg, Washington, and I was flabbergasted. I bought my license, I bought a pass for my car, and then when we got to park, I had to buy a parking pass. And that's not Idaho, and I'm really happy it's not Idaho. What can we do to preserve what we've got? I think we can, obviously one of the biggest challenges of our city is responsible growth and the development of it. I know people like their space, and I know we don't want to turn Hayden into a metropolis, and personally, not that I ever see it will become one. But I think we can work to keep all the things that keep Hayden positive.
Councilmember DePriest, you're up.
Hang on just a sec. Okay, the city of Hayden contracts with Kootenai County for law enforcement services. The county is asking for a significant increase in our payments this year and years going forward. Give us your thoughts on law enforcement in Hayden, how you might deal with the sheriff's request, please.
Thank you. Hayden is currently protected by Sheriff Bob Norris's staff. So Hayden does have law enforcement. It may be that Sheriff Norris feels that he can support our city better, and I do respect that. But I believe that crime statistics and service impacts should drive our recommendations. In the event that the data supports the need for more services, like traffic control, or improved services like response times, that we can meet with the sheriff. I haven't personally, but I will, I will. To learn his goals, look at our existing income and expenses, and see how we can fund such. We can also present information if we have to and ask the voters if this is something that they agree on and want to fund. I also thought that's a double-edged sword, though, because by asking for more services, we may have unexpected side effects like more speeding tickets, which might upset the local papas. So again, I think careful consideration needs to be made, and if we don't have the money currently, then we get the facts and we lay them out and let the voters decide if it's something they want.
Thank you.
That's my turn, okay. So there's a lot of talk about residential growth and density in the city of Hayden as we look out into the future. Share your thoughts on growth and how you would approach it as mayor.
Thank you for that question. I actually have 3 goals or 3 things I would like to help get the city pointed in a direction, and this is one of them. I would like to implement with the developers and the landowners affordable housing, responsible footprints consistent with the Imagine Hayden project. I want to help the public better understand the options between single-family homes and apartments. A lot of the feedback I hear, whether it's through informal meetings with, just informal meetings that we've had, or in planning and zoning, is that the populace seems, or at least represents themselves as being very concerned, as I would be, with this mass influx of apartments. And when Imagine Hayden was done, and for all the work that went in it, it's almost sad that so many people remained uninformed about what the city was trying to do. I see a lot of good housing designs, and I'd love to get the developers in and figure out how we can get them to start building homes that are like that. And when I say that, the options that are between the extremes of maintaining this one house per lot or per acre concept and just shoving people in like sardines, which none of us want. I'll work with council, our legal team, to see if we can do something like offer the developer's name on a sign or something, give them a little PR. I don't know what the rules are, but again, I want to dig into it so we can find that responsible growth. Obviously, we have a lot of vacant space here. Infield fill has been attempted in different places. Some places it's gone well, some places it has not gone well. So I thank you for asking me that question. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight.
This is a little bit of a redundant question, but are you familiar with the 2040 Hayden Comprehensive Plan that was approved in November? And could you give us your thoughts on it, on the plan itself?
I'm familiar with it in that it's one of the documents that planning and zoning uses to make decisions. I'm familiar with it in that it was one of the outputs of Imagine Hayden. Do I have it memorized? Absolutely not. It's this thick. I've certainly read it. We certainly discussed it at meetings. What was the last part of your question? You'd have more detail.
Just give us your thoughts on the plan itself.
I think the plan was a result of a lot of hard work, and there are details in it that I think are wonderful. There are details in it that I don't agree with, but none of us, including and especially me, are king or authoritarian. And so the good thing about comprehensive plans are they're living documents. We can make updates to them if we, get 5 miles down the road and figure out something's not working. Comprehensive plans need to be updated. I guess I'm kind of neutral on it. They need to be updated from time to time so they don't get stale, so they reflect what's going on in the city and how we're going to, what the direction that we want to put it into.
Okay, my turn. The city has a 5-year capital improvement plan. The city does not have enough money to address all the needs. What strategies or ideas do you have to address the situation?
I'll be honest with you, that's a tough question to answer without seeing the data. I'm kind of a real analytical person by trade. I could speak generally from my budgeting experience elsewhere that there are, and I assume the city has the same thing, there are unfunded requirements lists. There are people in the city probably going out looking for grants and other sources of income. So I honestly, to give you a thorough answer, I'd have to look at what's being requested and what the shortage is and what the priorities are. At the end of the day, I don't have a golden goose in my backyard, as none of us do. But it certainly would be our job to work very hard to fund what needs to be funded. Cities provide lights that work, streets that don't have potholes, other utilities, et cetera. And so our job would be to figure out how to pay for that.
I think we have an ordinance against having geese anyway. So. Thank you.
Okay, would you please share your understanding of Hayden's property taxes and describe your philosophy and ideas related to Hayden's property taxes?
Would you mind repeating the first
Sure,
part?
I
Just the
know.
first
Yeah,
part.
yeah.
I know it has to do with property tax.
Yeah,
but there's a little detail in
I
there.
talk a little fast. Please share your understanding of Hayden's property taxes and describe your philosophy and ideas related to Hayden's property taxes.
understanding of the Hayden property tax is that it's something we all pay. I know it's the lowest in the area, with the exception, I think, of Hayden Lake. I don't have the exact math on it, but I know it's a number based on an assessed property value, and the number that it's multiplied by is really long, and there's a lot of zeros to the right of the decimal, so it's a formula. I believe the county does the assessing, the city does the taxing, so that's what I know of it. My philosophy of it is, I live in the United States, I hate paying taxes like everybody else, and I want to pay the least amount of taxes that I have to. Having said that, I understand that taxes are also a responsibility for living in such a wonderful country, in such a wonderful state and city. And so it's silly to just say, well, we don't pay taxes. I'm a small business owner, so I'm taxed on all the money my business makes. I'm taxed when I pay myself, and then when I'm done with that, I also have to pay personal taxes again on that same thing. So I understand taxes and how they can definitely reduce the quality of our life if we don't pay attention to them.
Okay, thank you.
This is a lot harder when you have more than 3 minutes.
Good job.
My turn again. What experience do you have recruiting or interacting with businesses, and how would you support and encourage businesses to locate in Hayden?
Well, I'd be lying if I said I have direct experience recruiting businesses to come to Hayden, Idaho. Having said that, man, I'm drawing a blank, I apologize. It's the organization that Steve Griffiths used to work at. There is a body, at least as far as I know, still in the Coeur d'Alene area, that, and hopefully my brain will pop in here and tell me, that works to bring businesses to this area. One of the keys, though, to bringing business here is that we have housing that the workforce can afford. And I think as long as that's not the case, we're going to have a lot of trouble bringing in, modern brick or normal brick and mortar businesses or manufacturing, places where people aren't, making six figures doing employment. I'll share with you the wonderful family that bought my house when we moved 2 years ago. We were in Hayden, we moved to Hayden. He was able to keep his job as a commercial banker in another state. And so it was no problem for him to come up here because he's still getting paid the same amount he was in that other state that's more expensive than ours. Having said that, I look at my children and I look at people starting out. I don't know about you, when we were young, we did not have very much money. And if I wanted to work here, I'd have to live somewhere else. Again, I think the big hurdle for recruiting business here is making this business friendly without making it a place we don't want to live. In other words, we don't want to invite heavy industry or anything toxic into our environment. I would be 100% against things like that.
Okay, last question, maybe.
Maybe? Am I up to 12 already? Wow.
Do you have any personal or business affiliation with any of the council members? And if so, please explain.
The answer to that question is I do not. And one of the things that I appreciate about the council members is although our exposure has been somewhat limited, I have served the city a long time, and whether it was with you specifically or your predecessors, I've always appreciated a cordial and professional relationship. I'm not friends with any of you. We don't go out drinking beer or howling at the moon together, but I've never had a crossword with any of you, and I appreciate that.
How much time do we have left?
We are at 23 minutes, so there are 7 minutes left if he would like to utilize them, or if you have any follow-up questions related to his answers.
Well, one thing I'd like to ask, if I may, is a lot of times when you do these kind of interviews, there's an opening statement, kind of a general statement. Would you like to give us a generalized statement about who you are and maybe bring it to a finale of an answer? And that would be my question.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I gave a short opening statement. I do have a closing statement, and I do have a couple of points, if it's all right, that I just kind of anticipated, actually kind of prepared for this all weekend, so I thought, boy, what 12 things could you ask me? And I'm not going to lie, I swung the bat and didn't hit the ball too much as far as our ideas matching up, but it's okay. I think law enforcement was the big one, and business attraction, those were two. So you got me on the rest of the 10. I guess some of the things I wanted to talk about or let you know is that I'm a business owner, and as such, I'm the boss, and I have the flexibility to come in and the time and the aptitude to learn what I need to learn if you select me as a mayor. My personality, and I know people in P&Z will back this up 100%, affords me the humility to work to close any knowledge gaps that exist. So again, I mean, I have intimate knowledge of this and that, but I'll learn it, and I will apply myself to the level that I need to be effective. I have three things that I want to help lead the city from a position on based on facts. One is downtown development. I think if you ask the average person, where's downtown Hayden, they're going to give you the Air Force salute. We have a report, actually a study was done in late 2006, and I've got a copy of the pages right here, the Downtown Hayden Retail Market Analysis Summary of Findings, and I read the top issues from early 2007, and they're exactly the same. And this kind of feeds into bringing business in. I don't have the, I wasn't in the room when decisions were made, and I am not here to criticize any of them, but I see a town where one of our biggest inputs to our budget is sales tax, and maybe this feeds one of your questions better. I apologize, I wasn't articulate the first time around. Sales tax in 2021 was approximately $1.5 million for the city, and that could pay for a lot of things. I see our downtown area as every lot as the opportunity to develop a town where people are going to walk, not drive into a coffee shop and pop out, but actually walk and spend money. And when they spend money, eventually, I know it goes back up to the state and we get just a little bit of it, but the point is it's going to raise money for the city to pay for things like our unfunded expenditures that you guys asked about. So that's one thing. I really want to work with the developers or whomever we need to work with and put us on a proper downtown, again, where families are going to want to walk around and spend money. The second thing that I want to do in the 18 months, if I'm given the opportunity, is build on the legacy work to continue building our community. As an example, I would like to see, instead of just kind of the same old picnics that we have, maybe a host a fitness fair, get the local gyms and maybe someone from the hospital to do some nutrition counseling and just have a more fun, maybe a little 5K run or a 3K run walk, some events like that that might more energize the community. Related to that, I also want to better explore social media marketing and information. I want to see, and this will feed hopefully to maybe attracting business and people here, tell some positive, good stories about Hayden. This is a great place. And no, it's not that I want everybody to come relocate here. No, I don't. But I think we can improve our communications to our citizens through more. We have a website, and I know it's work, so I'm not throwing dirt on anything that's been done. I just think we can do more in that area. And then the third thing I touched on, which was implementing some responsible growth housing. So those are the three directions I want to go. My closing statement, I'm surprised no one asked me, why do you want to run for mayor? I thought that'd be the first question.
You're at 2 minutes.
2 minutes, thank you, I won't need it. I'm a purpose-driven life person. I moved here 10 years ago. Hayden asked for youth soccer coaches. I said yes. Through doing that, I learned Hayden needed a planning and zoning commissioner, not a leader, but just a commissioner. I stepped in and did that. When we had a turnover and they asked for a vice commissioner, I stepped up and did that. And when our chair left, I stepped up and did that. And now Hayden's asking us to have a mayor. And here I am stepping up. My adult life is centered around service to others. And my hope and my ask is that your vote is based on my experience and my knowledge, on my lack of bias to you or to any specific agenda, and my service to the city. I will pledge to work with you and listen to each of you to support our city and our citizens. And I apologize if I came across a little nervous tonight. I am 100% sweaty palmed.
So how much time?
About 40 seconds.
Ed, you're in the
Do we have any
rotation.
of that additional 10 for, is this follow-up now?
Yeah, you're next in rotation. I asked the
I
first
thought we
follow-up.
went to 40 if we want to follow up.
Okay,
Is that correct?
go ahead.
I
Okay.
can't run now?
No. Stop drinking, that makes you sweat. Property taxes, we touched on it a bit, in particular and specifically with regard to property taxes. They're a huge issue here. With all of everybody's asking for more, if the sheriff's asking for it, pretty soon the schools will be, everybody needs more, inflation and all that. You said, and I appreciate the fact that you would place the facts in front of the people and let them vote. Can you touch a little bit more on the tax situation between residential and business and the balance between the two, maybe?
The balance, so I'm a little short on my knowledge on business tax. My business personally doesn't pay tax to the city of Idaho because of the kind of business it is. I apologize, I pay to the state, I don't pay to the city of Hayden. If I had a retail store or something, I could speak better to that. So I would definitely, obviously, learn more about that. I realize that everybody's always got their hand out. But that's where I like to use data-driven stuff. If we were having people murdered and robbed every week, I'd probably jump all over as much law enforcement as we have. If we weren't probably one of the most well-armed states in the union, I probably would jump all over that. And that doesn't mean I'm not open to, again, looking at the amount of monies we have and coming up with creative ways to fill necessary gaps in coverage. So again, I need to dig into the facts and learn what they are.
Thank you.
9 minutes.
Huh?
If you're moving into the 10, it's just a brief, you don't have to use the 10.
Oh, okay.
It is just an opportunity for a brief follow-up on any of his previous answers.
Well, then who is up next? Councilmember White, you're up next.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Satterfield, you're up if you'd like to ask.
I have no other questions.
Anybody else?
Go ahead if you do.
Okay, well, this is, we're gonna get real specific here. What are the 3 worst intersections in Hayden and how would we fix them?
Is that a follow-up to a previous answer?
I don't think that's,
Oh, it is about funding and how we're gonna pay for all this.
You know, that's a pretty subjective question because,
Where you live and how you
Yeah, I'm
drive.
just asking, what do you think?
I mean,
Gonna pay for it.
Fourth and Prairie, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not keen on Dalton refusing the money that would have given us the circle we planned. Let's see, coming out on the 95 from Hayden is a bit tough if you're coming from the west. The 4-way at Honeysuckle and, is it Atlas or Ramsey? That's a pretty bad one. You know, honestly though, I've lived in big cities my whole life, and I laugh every single time I start to get mad at traffic, and I know it's all relative, and I do apologize. I am not belittling anyone else's perspective, but traffic here, even on its worst day, is nothing compared to, sitting in Washington DC for 3 hours trying to get 10 miles. It doesn't mean that it's not a serious issue. It doesn't mean we don't need to figure out ways to make traffic better. We absolutely do. But I don't know, is traffic here bad anywhere? I don't think it's bad. It's certainly inconvenient. It can frustrate us, sure. But I've never sat, I know, and I've heard from planning and zoning, there are intersections where people say, well, I sat to sit 5 lights to get through. Obviously, again, that's ridiculous, and wherever that is, we should take a look at that. But overall, I don't know, 3 intersections are bad.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I hope you don't mind I put a little fun into that one.
Are we,
You good?
we'll conclude with our first applicant. I thank you so much, because it's not easy to be doing what you're doing right now. I mean, so
No, it's
thank
not.
you for stepping up and taking the time and working on it over the weekend and being prepared. Thank you so much.
Well, for giving the opportunity, I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
All right, next person.
Council President, why don't you guys take a minute and solidify your notes privately?
Write some-
So we don't have to rush right into the next one.
That 10-minute gap was in case you did have follow-ups. They still have just 30 minutes, so.
Ask them the same question, so it's fair.
Okay,
Because it really wasn't a follow-up, it was another question, so just make sure you ask him that one too.
all right. Which questions?
The 3 worst intersection.
Can the audience,
Yeah.
Stop talking.
We could have some,
thank you.
thank you. We know where you live. I'm not going to ask that because it's on the application. So if you just tell us who you are, your name, and then I'm going to begin with, oh, wait a minute, I've got to read something here.
Yes.
Sorry. Before we start, we thank you for your interest in serving the community as mayor. We, as the city council, will be conducting these interviews and may or may not make a decision tonight. The order of interviews was randomly selected. You will have about 30 minutes for 12 questions, or about 2.5 minutes per question, so gauge your answers accordingly. There may be follow-up questions that will not count against your time. All 3 candidates will receive the same 12 questions. After your interview, we will ask that you go back into the hall and not discuss your interview with any of the other candidates. After all the interviews are done, you are welcome to come back into the council chambers. So with that,
Great. Well, thank you for having me. It's my honor and my privilege to be here. My name is Ian Cosby, and I live here in Hayden. Been here for 2.5 years, and I'm looking forward to serving this community more.
thank you. Okay, I get the first question.
All right.
And then we're just going to rotate in the same cycle till we go through all of them.
Okay.
Okay? Tell us a little bit about your background and leadership experience that you feel qualifies you to be the mayor of Hayden.
Okay. Yeah, I graduated from the University of Idaho in the ROTC program, which is the Army Leadership Program, and then commissioned as an active duty Army officer, and was an active duty Army officer for 11 years. Before that, I served in the Idaho Army National Guard for 2 years. And then after my active duty, I'm now in the Army Reserves, serving as an Army aviation officer and a major, in the rank of major. And in my years of service, I've led platoons in Iraq and staffs. I've been chief of some staffs, and I also worked as a company commander, which is like a CEO of a maintenance company in South Korea. And that company was about 130 Army soldiers, which I was the leader of. And then we also had 10 contractors in addition to that, which I managed as well. So I have a significant amount of staff experience dealing with personnel, planning operations, developing training plans, and commanding soldiers. I also did logistics. I was an S4 officer, which is an Army logistics officer, where I helped manage the battalion budget, ground budget. So I've got finance experience as well.
Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you for coming in tonight and for stepping forward to serve, possibly serve the city. What is the role of a mayor?
The role of mayor, I think, is to really serve the people is the ultimate part of that, is listening to the community and making the community as strong as it can be, to give some guidance, to work with the city council in the executive area, and passing policies and making decisions that benefit our community in line with the will of the community. And so that's where, and then also working together with outside organizations to make Hayden a desirable place to live. And so I'm looking forward to doing that.
Thank you.
So it's my turn. Thank you for coming tonight and for stepping up. It's very important to build good relationships as mayor and handle difficult relationships positively. How do you build positive relationships and handle difficult situations? Please give us an example of how you've handled relationships positively in prior positions.
Okay, that's a great question. And a lot of times, handling a difficult situation comes down to listening, patiently and non-judgmentally, trying to really understand what the goal of each person is. And a lot of times, the goals are similar. It's just the process that there's some friction on. And so connecting with people on a personal level, really understanding what they're trying to get at, and then moving from that foundation to a solution that's beneficial for everyone, or as close as you can be to finding a common solution. And in the military, we've got a lot of big egos there. And so a lot of times that's difficult, but really I think it comes down to finding that common ground with each person, and then moving up from there to find a solution.
Thank you.
And thank you for your interest,
Thank
for
you.
sure. Could you give an example of a problem you had while in a leadership position and how you solved it?
Yes. So when I was in that logistics officer position, so I had a fairly small team. We had, on average, probably about 5 people on our team. And when I got there, it was run by a logistics trained officer. And I was an aviation trained officer filling into that logistics position. So I had to learn a lot really fast. But what I noticed was that there was a real lack of communication from that office to other agency, the other departments. And so that caused a lot of friction areas where people didn't know what was happening, and that caused a lot of problems. And so one of the things that I did was I created a task list, a task board that we could all reference communication off of. So if someone got a new task, then we'd write it on the board so everyone had a shared and common understanding of what that task was and what we needed to do. I also wrote some policy that was a reference book that people could go to for those common questions, so that even the lower people in the room, just newer people, I'll say newer people, could reference that book and help people at the lowest level. They didn't have to elevate it, and so that reduced workload for everyone. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
My turn. Why do you think people like to live in Hayden? What is it that you think they like the most, and how can we preserve that?
I think the common theme is that people are friendly here, and they like the small town kind of community, and I enjoy that as well. And so the way that we can do that is by ensuring, as we grow, that we have infrastructure in place that provides safe growth. So do we have appropriate sidewalks and setbacks and things like that are can keep our community safe and make people feel comfortable here? And I think that's really, really key to that, having that quality community.
Okay, the city of Hayden contracts with Kootenai County for law enforcement services. The county is asking for a significant increase in our payments this year and for years going forward. Give us your thoughts on law enforcement in Hayden and how you might deal with the sheriff's request, please.
Well, we need to look at the data. So do we have data that shows that we need an increased budget for the sheriff's department? Do we have an increased need for that law enforcement? I think that's really a data question that we need to look at to say, is this a fair value trade? So are we getting more value as we provide more funding? So that's a great question, and I think it's the answer will be based on the data that we have to make a fair assessment on those funds.
Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn. There's a lot of talk about residential growth and density in the city of Hayden as we look out into the future. Share your thoughts on growth and how you would approach it as mayor.
Okay, I think I addressed that a little bit in one of the previous questions about making sure that our growth is safe. And that's really my number one thing, because my daughter, she's 13, and she'll ride her bicycle around, and I want her to have a safe place to do that. That's the most important thing to growth, I think, is the safety, and then maintaining quality of life. So what does that look like, the quality of life? It's ensuring that if we're allowing more residential growth or apartments somewhere, if we're allowing to do that, do we have the road infrastructure that we need so that we're not being backed up? We don't have to wait 3 lights to get through the light, because that's not really where I want to see it. But when we were coming in, we were backed up, I think about 3 lights before we could get through that intersection. And that doesn't make this feel like a small town friendly. I don't think that's a great way to maintain that small town atmosphere that we like. So if we're going to grow, we need to have the infrastructure in place before we allow that.
Are you familiar with the 2440 Hayden Comprehensive Plan that was approved in November of 2020? And would you give us your thoughts on it?
Okay. Yes, I think that the plan is lacking some detail that we need to grow responsibly. And so some of those road requirements that I referenced previously, I think are not specific enough, and that those infrastructure concerns need to be more clearly identified before moving into some phases of that plan.
Okay, my turn. The city has a 5-year capital improvement plan. The city does not have enough money to address all the needs. What strategies or ideas do you have to address the situation?
Okay. Well, I guess I haven't seen the fund deficits for that. And so the strategies would kind of depend on the level that we need to go to. But, and could you be more specific about the areas of those fund deficits?
Well, I've got to give you the same question as everybody else. So, do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay. The city has a 5-year capital improvement plan. The city does not have enough money to address all the needs. What strategies or ideas do you have to address the situation?
Okay. There are lots of different ways to raise funds. We could apply for grants. We could look for external investments through private investments, depending on what we need to pay for. We can get creative with how we use those funds. If we can use them, if we can use private funds or to use, it's hard to answer the question without knowing more about what those capital requirements are for. But there's a lot of ways that you can be creative outside of just doing bake sales and things. But I think a lot of it could be also, if you're encouraging small businesses, that could add revenue. If you're providing some incentives for them to contribute in some way to the projects, then those are some other ways as well.
Thank you.
Just a sec here. Okay. Could you please share your understanding of Hayden's property taxes and describe your philosophy and ideas related to Hayden property taxes?
Okay. The property taxes are used to fund, and I'm not specific on all of those, but they do help with various city functions and growth. If your question is more getting at how do we control growth without raising property taxes, if that's kind of the heart of the question there, then you can look at raising those funds through other means, through impact fees potentially, versus raising property taxes. So I am supportive of that for growth purposes. Otherwise, you need to have very good reasons for raising property taxes, and I haven't seen that yet.
Thank you.
Okay, it's back to me. What experience do you have recruiting or interacting with businesses, and how would you support and encourage businesses to locate in Hayden?
A very good question. I just recently finished my Master of Business Administration, so I speak business, and I'm also involved in the Innovation Collective in Coeur d'Alene, which is a great kind of think tank group for new businesses, creative ideas, bringing new business to the area. They do a lot of that, and I've been involved with them for I think about a year and a half, 2 years. And so attracting new businesses to Hayden, there's also that piece that we need to have the infrastructure depending on what we want to do with that, but fully supportive of that. Did that answer the question? I got a little sidetracked, I think.
That's good.
Would you repeat it, or is that a
I can
satisfactory?
repeat it. What experience do you have recruiting or interacting with businesses, and how would you support and encourage businesses to locate in Hayden?
Okay. So, yeah, I think as far as recruiting businesses, that's a fairly niche thing, but I think that I have a broad range of experience. I started as an IT guy, and I'm a licensed commercial aviator and an Army officer, and have done human resources and a lot of things that help me connect with businesses. And then having the MBA also is going to really help with speaking their language, finding things that are going to attract them to this area to provide some of the needed jobs that we need.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, do you have any personal or business affiliation with any of the council members? And if so, could you explain?
No business relations at all. I met Councilmember White just before she got elected. And we met for coffee once, and that was about it. And that was before the mayoral process, candidacy process. And then I sent emails to all of the council members when the previous mayor resigned, indicating my interest there. So, does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
How much time do we have left on the 30 minutes?
About 10 minutes.
So I guess we'll continue with follow-up.
Yeah, so you can ask him for his closing statement now and let him utilize the 10 minutes first.
Okay, so I get to ask you a question is, if you have prepared or not prepared a closing statement, or even a beginning statement that you could add your closing statement, you're welcome to do that now.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm a finish when the job is finished kind of person. I'm not, in the Army we have a term of training to time versus training to standard. So if we can complete this meeting and meet all the objectives early, then the meeting's done. And let's go spend time with our families. So, and I see the position as mayor as someone who has responsibility for overall governing of the meeting, right, leading the meeting. And so I really hate wasting people's time, right? So I want to find the ways of doing things most efficiently, and are we doing the best that we can at it? And if we're not, then we need to spend some time and work on those things. And then once we've met the standard or even exceeded the standard, then kudos to us, and let's move on. So unless there are any further questions, I thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to serving as mayor pending approval.
So I have to ask one more because I asked our previous applicant the same question.
No,
On the intersection?
no, you just need to ask any follow-up to his actual answers.
Okay, so does anybody have any follow-up questions? Yes.
I have one follow-up. In your first answer, you were talking about the Army Reserves, and I would just like to know what kind of time commitment the Army Reserves requires.
Okay, great question. Army Reserves, in my current position, quarterly, I go for 6 days. And then once a year, I have a 2-week annual training commitment.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You have any?
No, no, go ahead, Ed.
Okay. I'm going to kind of go back to property taxes here. Excuse me. And we talked a little bit about the sheriff and law enforcement. And if you could maybe tell us what you do know about what the sheriff may be requesting, type of thing. And the sheriff is asking for increased funding. Infrastructure needs increased funding. How do you feel about going to the property owners and saying, listen, here's the deal as related to property taxes?
Okay. If we really need those services, and that's a look at the data, and hopefully the city has some of that as far as the coverage that we're getting, how many calls that we're getting that require those services. So maybe it's we can change our coverage levels so that they're balanced better to when the actual calls are, and we can not have to pay as much. If we are really seeing an increased need for sheriff response, then ultimately keeping the city safe is the most important piece. I will pay more property taxes to keep the city safe if that's required. But I think a lot of times we can find solutions that don't cost as much. There's almost always waste in government, in my experience. And so finding those pieces could be useful. And then ultimately, if there's no other way, but I think there usually is a creative solution to either raising more funds or looking at the data when we need to adjust coverage, then that can be
Can I
done.
follow up on something that he related to that?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned in your first answer related that you had budget experience. Now you've just spoken about basically you said there is always waste or you made it something to that effect.
Almost always waste.
Have you had an opportunity to look at the City of Hayden budget?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ian?
Council President Roder, if you'd like to ask your intersection question, you have time.
Well, he kind of identified one of them.
Go ahead.
This is
But I
ask it of all three.
will ask the question.
3 words there.
Okay, what are the 3 worst intersections? And the reason I'm asking is, we want
Don't use up his time, just ask the
Okay,
question.
what are the 3 worst intersections in Hayden? What do you think they are?
Well, the one right out here,
You already mentioned what?
What is that one?
Hayden Avenue and Government Way. Or I mean, not Hayden Avenue, Honeysuckle, yeah. Honeysuckle and Government Way. And I think the other one on the other end of Government Way, what is it? The one I keep talking, Lancaster, yes, Lancaster and Government Way. I think that could use probably a roundabout, would really smooth that out for kids that are going to school out that way at the Hayden Canyon Charter. That can get a little hairy sometimes in the morning. And third intersection, it's probably the one, our other stoplight, the other end, Prairie and Government Way. Probably our worst.
It's all subjective.
Yes. My biggest issue with it is that the lights are not programmed correctly. And so it's a very inefficient flow of traffic. I've actually logged on my phone the ways that it inappropriately turns or gives a green arrow light when there's either nobody in the left turn lane or maybe one car, and that should be a flashing yellow so that the people going straight can go through, and that one car will have to wait a little bit, but it's not stopping the whole straight through traffic flow. So there's some stuff we can do there to really improve the sequence of our traffic lights without even expanding our roads. And I've already logged some of that stuff, so I'm ready to go on that one.
Any other follow-up? I do want to thank you for your service to our country and what a commitment that is, and how you, and the sacrifice for family and so forth. So I just appreciate what you've done there. And I need to mention that to our Alan too. I forgot to do that, but I will do that when he comes back in. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
So with that, we would like to have council take time and do some notes.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, how are you doing?
I am well, thank you. How are you folks tonight?
Well, you're the last
I guarantee
one.
you're better than what we are, but
So before we start, I've been instructed to give you something that I need to read, and each candidate, I read this too, so I'll begin.
sure.
We thank you for your interest in serving the community as mayor. We, as the city council, will be conducting these interviews and may or may not make a decision tonight. The order of interviews was by random selection. You have about 30 minutes for 12 questions, or about 2.5 minutes per question, and so gauge your answers accordingly. There may be follow-up questions that will not count against your time. All three candidates will receive the same 12 questions. After your interview, we would ask that you go back into the hall and not discuss your interview with any other candidates. After all the interviews are done, you're welcome to come back into the council chambers. So with that, just give us your name. We know where you live.
My name is Scott Forsell. I live at 1272 West Tamarindo Lane in Hayden.
So I get to ask the first question.
All right, sir, go for it.
All right, tell us a little bit about your background and leadership experience that you feel qualifies you to be the mayor of Hayden.
In 2.5 minutes. Okay. I'm retired. I am retired from the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Land Management, and I'll refer to that as BLM. Please understand that's the Bureau of Land Management. Thank you. In that job, I've had extensive land use planning experience. I managed for the last 6 years of my career, I managed a large federal budget and a large federal program for the BLM. I have a large sense of civic pride. And I want to make the city of Hayden an even better place than it already is today. I believe I'm qualified to be the mayor of Hayden because I have that pride. I like to listen to people. I try to make reasoned judgments based on facts and not emotions. And I feel that we have progress that we can make in all working together to make Hayden a better place.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, thank you for throwing your hat in the ring and for coming tonight and for stepping up to this situation. What is the role of a mayor?
I believe the role of a mayor is to, first of all, be an ambassador for the city. A mayor is, like it or not, the face of a city. And I believe that the mayor needs to take that face and actually try to be the city. Certainly he has to represent the city, or she. In addition, the mayor, although technically is the chief administrative officer, city administrator does a wonderful job with that, and I don't view that as being a large portion of the job. Obviously, the mayor is a fifth person in case of a tiebreaker with the council, but I believe the mayor needs to show leadership and show the employees that they are valued. We have an amazing staff here working for the city of Hayden. And I believe that part of the mayor's job is to show that staff how much appreciation we all have for the job that they do here. The mayor is the individual that works with outside entities, is the face of outside entities. And there are administrative jobs such as, having various council persons, council members work on various ad hoc committees. But in summary, I believe the mayor needs to instill confidence in the employees of the city of Hayden, needs to be the face for the city of Hayden, needs to represent them in all things, and do the best job they can to make the city a better place to live.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn. I want to thank you also for stepping up.
Sure.
It's very important to build good relationships as mayor and handle difficult situations positively. How do you build positive relationships and handle difficult situations? Please give us an example of how you've handled relationships positively in prior positions.
In my job with the Bureau of Land Management, I was a national program manager for communication sites. To just very briefly give you an idea of that, if you think of Canfield Mountain, it's got a lot of radio antennas, buildings, radio towers at the top. I managed that program for the Bureau of Land Management. There are about 1,100 of those sites on public land across the western U.S. Oftentimes the people who use those sites don't like each other. I mean, they don't like each other at all. They're business competitors. They have AM radio, FM radio, television, cell phone, cellular, all sorts of things like this. They have site issues, they have interference issues, they have access issues. My job, one of my jobs, working for the BLM, was to come to these areas where people actually could not get along. And my way of dealing with the situation, did I have the authority to lay down the law and say, this is the way it's going to be? Yes. But instead of that, I tried to pull everybody, I pulled everybody together in the same room, sat them all down in the same room. Everybody heard what everybody else's problems were. And in the end, everyone agreed on a course of action and a management plan that would work for that mountaintop. Now, sometimes I had to order out dinner to make that work. But in the end, everyone understood what went on. Standing there and pounding your fist on the table and saying, this is the way it's going to be, okay, that's one way of approaching it. But I tried to build consensus and get folks that are on opposite ends of a issue to understand what the center point can be and let them come up with the solution to the problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for throwing your hat in the ring. Could you give us an example of a problem you had while in a leadership position and how you solved it?
Okay. let me rewind to the previous question here. Could you repeat the question, please, Mr. Satterfield?
Sure. Could you give an example of a problem you had while in a leadership position and how you solved it?
You've heard of AT&T and Verizon and Sprint, I know. T-Mobile. Trust me, in the business world, these folks don't get along. In my previous job as the program manager for communication sites, I often had to deal with the local representatives for all of these cellular phone companies who basically they're trying to put each other out of business. By bringing people together and showing them that, first of all, they're not going to get out of that room without making an answer or making a solution to what the problem is, I was able to work with them, have them understand the problem, and in the end, we all came out with a solution that was maybe not favored by all, but at least acceptable to all.
Okay, my turn. Why do you think people like to live in Hayden? What is it that you think they like the most? And how can we preserve that?
I moved up here in 1978 from Roswell, New Mexico, working for the BLM. I drove across 4 days of the western U.S., and I got to Coeur d'Alene and Hayden, and I looked around and I saw the mountains, I saw the trees, I saw the natural beauty, I saw the lakes and the rivers, and I said, wow, this is wonderful. When I talk to people about Hayden, I hear them saying the same things about what's wonderful in this city, not just this city, this area. We have a great place here. Some of the things that I really enjoy about Hayden, first of all, we have a low tax base. That's nice. We live right next to a beautiful lake. We have wonderful parks. We've got a city staff that is very responsive anytime we have any questions. I just can't imagine a better place to live. And could you repeat the rest of the question for me, please, Mr. Roeder?
You bet. What is it that you, and now maybe you already answered, but I'll ask the last part of it. What is it that you think they like the most, this is the people that moved to Hayden, and how can we preserve that? So I guess it would be, how can we preserve what you just described?
The city, what I think people enjoy most about Hayden, we have the small town attitude. That's wonderful too. With the population pressures we're feeling now, that's becoming more difficult to maintain. But with the natural beauty that we have here and the parks that we have, we already do a wonderful job, I feel, at Honeysuckle Beach and the boat launch areas there. I hope that we can, and I have confidence that we will continue to maintain our parks and keep the natural feeling that we like to have here in Hayden.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the city of Hayden contracts with Kootenai County for law enforcement services. The county is asking for a significant increase in our payment this year and for years going forward. Please give us your thoughts on law enforcement in Hayden and how you might deal with the sheriff's request.
I think the sheriff gave a very convincing argument a couple of months ago when he came to the council chambers, and at a council meeting he described the problems that he is having dealing with crime in the city of Hayden. We look at the reported numbers and we think that crime is actually decreasing. It was surprising to me to find out that it is not. It is actually increasing, and he does not have the officers available to deal with the crime here in town. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but crime has found Hayden, and we need to stop that. I fully support Sheriff Norris, and I believe that we do need to increase the law enforcement presence in Hayden. I hate to say that, but I'm afraid it's a fact. Getting money for that, that's a tougher situation. I have spent the last several days going over everything I can find on the web for Hayden's budget and Hayden's budget process. There's not a lot of information there that shows me where we can spend or how much discretionary money we have to spend on additional resources for the sheriff's department. I understand as citizens, we don't like to see this money go anywhere, and I know that as well as anybody. I get tax bills just like everyone else here. But given Sheriff Norris's, I feel, convincing arguments about where we are headed with crime in Hayden, we need to find the money somewhere, if not to fully fund what he's requesting, at least to partially do what we can to help.
Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about residential growth and density in the city of Hayden as we look out into the future. Share your thoughts on growth and how you would approach it as mayor.
In my career with the Bureau of Land Management here in Coeur d'Alene, I worked on 2 major land use plans for public lands in northern Idaho. What I found is that in these public meetings, you would do everything you could to get people involved, but you didn't have much luck. Then you made your decisions. And at that point, once people found out how these decisions were going to affect them, they came out of the woodwork. I believe that's the same thing that's happened here in Hayden. Our comprehensive plan has some great, it's a great plan. We have the sections on economic development, on parks and recreation, transportation. These are wonderful. The place that I think that we may have missed the boat is in the land use and the growth section. It's my perception and the perception of the people that I talk to that we may have gone a step too far on that comprehensive plan, allowing the amount of growth that we have right now in the city. The comprehensive plan says that most of our growth is going to come from mixed use and mixed residential land uses. I would like to see us dig deeper into the comprehensive plan and dial back, perhaps, when appropriate, in those areas. I happen to live in an area that has always been single-family residential and is now zoned as mixed residential. I would like to see us revisit that. I've been very impressed, just within the last month or two. Council has taken some steps. I'll back up a moment. When council first asked about amending the comprehensive plan in terms of growth, there were some pretty serious dollar numbers thrown around as to what it was going to cost to make that happen. Really big numbers. I've been impressed with what the council has done recently, though, in the mixed use, particularly around the Hutter bypass, by simply changing and adding some subsets to the comprehensive plan, and of course the city ordinances, we have been able to greatly slow down the potential growth around the Hutter bypass area, at least until we know what's going on there. I would like to see more of those types of situations where we start tweaking language, we move boundary lines, we change some map lines. The better part of that is I think we can get to that with almost no expense, certainly relative to the amount of cost of fully amending the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Okay, you've kind of answered the question I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case you want to elaborate some more. But are you familiar with the 2040 Hayden Comprehensive Plan that was approved in November of 2020? Could you give us your thoughts on it?
Yes, sir. I am familiar with it. I have read that plan. As long as you're going to give me an opportunity for a couple extra thoughts on it.
Sure.
In the land use section of that plan, it takes the new types of land uses and it did an analysis on the number of available dwelling units that can be put up using the new comprehensive plan rules. And in the plan, it says that we can redevelop, because we allow greater densities, about 6,500 new dwelling units. And we have the opportunity to put in almost 17,000 new dwelling units that are now vacant. Well, you take 6,000, 17,000, that's 23,000, and let's just say there's 3 people per household. 3 times 17,000, that number is a lot more than any of us want to see. I hope that we have the opportunity to work with those numbers and bring that back to some more realistic figures. There are a whole bunch of really neat portions to our comprehensive plan. It took an amazing amount of work to put together. But I'd like to see that section revisited.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
All right. The city has a 5-year capital improvement plan. The city does not have enough money to address all the needs. What strategies or ideas do you have to address the situation?
The budget numbers that I looked at showed in 2021 we had about $6 million in needs. I believe I heard at a council meeting in the relatively recent past, we may have 10% of the money available to throw at that. I'm not a wizard with money. I have heard council ask, how can we fund these priorities? I hope that impact fees will help. I would like to see us use impact fees more than, well, as much as we possibly can. Other than that, I do not have the answers for how we can fund those unfunded priorities that we have right now in the city.
Thank you.
Sec. Okay. Please share your understanding of Hayden's property taxes and describe your philosophy and ideas related to Hayden's property taxes.
Could you please repeat the first?
Sure.
Thank you.
Please share your understanding of Hayden's property taxes and describe your philosophy and ideas related to Hayden's property taxes.
Hayden taxes at 3%. It has been for a long time. I expect it will be in the future. 3% of the value. I take a look at my tax bill, and the Hayden portion of that tax bill, I think my tax bill was $2,500 and the Hayden portion of that was $300. Boy, that's just not much. As much as anybody in this room, I don't want my taxes going up. The city right now, my understanding is that the city is restricted to no more than 3% per year increase. I think that's fair. Unfortunately, that leaves us with unfunded mandates, but without going to the voters to ask them, what they think about special levies, I'm afraid that we are where we're at with the property taxes. It bothers me when people say, when people point to council and say, you guys are raising our taxes, or you're causing problems with our taxes, when the percentage of Hayden taxes are very small on our tax bill every year.
Thank you.
Okay, back to me. What experience do you have recruiting, interacting with businesses, and how would you support and encourage businesses to locate in Hayden?
That's a good question. In between my stints with the Bureau of Land Management, I ran Amco Transmissions down on 3rd Street for 6 years. Recruiting people was always an issue, a whole lot more of an issue now, but it has always been an issue. Ms. White, I had a thought on that. Could you please ask your question again?
Yes. What experience do you have recruiting or interacting with businesses, and how would you support and encourage businesses to locate in Hayden?
Okay. At the last council meeting, I believe perhaps it was one before that, the council took up an issue in basically raising the minimum wage for city employees. We've got to stay competitive to keep the employees we have. And our city has some great employees, but we've got to stay competitive to do that. I'm impressed. I have heard several members of council say that they have visited new businesses, and the response from the new businesses is, this is the only place we went to where we actually felt welcomed. I think, first of all, good for us, but shame on the other cities in this area that have the opportunity to attract business and don't do it. We have a very responsive city government to new business. And I can remember, I've lived here 30 years. I can remember in the not too distant past where businesses complained about how tough it was to do business in Hayden. That's not the case anymore. We've got a great city staff that responds to the needs of any new business coming into town. I'm very impressed with it, and that we have the can-do attitude to bring new businesses in here, because essentially new businesses don't cost us as much as new houses do. I like seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This might be the last question. Do you have any personal or business affiliation with any of the council members? And if so, please explain.
Business or personal relationships? No, sir, I do not. That's not completely true. I discussed fishing with Councilmember Roeder once.
Is that business
He's a
or?
good fisherman.
Total disclosure.
Thanks.
Sure.
So there can be some follow-up questions by council, and I'm going to ask the first one. It's going to be a combined question that if you have an opening statement and/or a closing statement, you can combine them and give us those statements, please.
Are you folks asking for a closing statement now?
Yeah, I'm asking, you can, if you had an opening statement prepared and/or a closing, you can give us both at this point.
I did not have an opening statement prepared. I have a summary, but if anyone has any other follow-up questions, I'd be happy to entertain those before I gave that.
No, you can, that's the question now.
That's it.
Yeah, give us, yeah, thank
So
you.
we're at 27 minutes right now, so he has 3 minutes to do his summary, and then you can have the extra 10 to ask any follow-up questions at that point.
Okay. Hayden is a wonderful place. We have a great comprehensive plan. We have an incredible city staff. We have great parks. We've got lots of things that we've got going for us. I'd like you to think for a moment about how much better we could make Hayden a place to be if we were all able to work together. I want to be a part of that. Thank you very much.
So follow-up questions. I guess I get to ask mine. Here we go. This is subjective, so you're not too much on the spot. What are the 3 worst intersections in Hayden?
Oh. Boy, I'm not sure how subjective that is. I think it's pretty objective. Right down here at Government Way and Honeysuckle, probably number 1. I believe the second worst intersection is Honeysuckle and Ramsey. That 4-way stop sign is terrible. I can't tell you what the third one is, but I'll tell you those 2 are bad.
Thank you. Now for any of the council members that have follow-up questions, this is the time, so who would like to go? Sandra, would you like to start, please?
Let me think on it a little more.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Satterfield.
No,
It's up to you.
Okay. We touched on the taxes and property taxes and the like, and the sheriff, and the needs of the capital improvement plan. And everybody recognizes that there's to do it right and to do what we all feel would be to place us in the best situation that we could be if we could, type of thing. We need a lot of money. We need to find resources and funding somewhere. Could you talk about your feelings about the process, or how you would approach, I guess, an increase in property taxes? I think you said you felt that, we pay a low rate and we need to pay more. How would you deal with that in relationship to the community?
Well, first of all, Mr. DePriest, I do not want to be labeled as someone who wants to increase property taxes. So just so we're all square on that.
We all
And I
are.
know that none of you do either. There may come a time here, there may be a time that we need to ask the citizens, are you willing to pay more money in order to provide a safe environment for Hayden? Because I think Sheriff Norris did a pretty good job of, most of us live in a bubble where we say, hey, everything's wonderful in Hayden. It is not all wonderful. We've got problems. And there may come a time that we need to, in the near future, that we need to ask the citizens, we have problems, are you willing to put out some money to fix those problems? I am not, at this point, I'm not. I'm not suggesting a levy. I'm not suggesting anything remote to that. But we may have to ask that question soon.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Anybody else?
Nope.
Well, that would conclude our interviews of the applicants. So,
Deliberation.
this is item number 3, deliberation of candidates. And I don't know, do we have all the candidates in here? Because they can come in now if they wish.
They are here and would like to come in,
Okay.
yes, they can.
Scott, you can sit down if you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Do you want me to ask them if they want to do an executive session?
Yeah, I think let's give them some direction.
Does the council wish to have a brief executive session to get some direction on the deliberations and maybe ask about the background checks?
I would like to keep that in the open,
Okay.
unless someone else wants to make a motion to go into executive session.
I just wanted to
That's
make
where
it
I'm at.
available. Okay.
Thank you.
You use the term background check, which I do not have any idea, and everything may be perfectly fine, which I hope it is. But I think it would be good for us to hear that either, hey, things are great, or there may be an issue that you may want to consider, which is private information. So maybe, hopefully, just a very brief one where hopefully it'd be, things are great, and we bring all the people back in and not have to have much of a discussion.
On that particular item, Sean and I have worked, and Sean has gathered some information. I think she has maybe a short statement she can give that will alleviate some concerns.
At this point, I wouldn't see there would be any concerns that would
Okay.
eliminate a candidate.
Great.
One thing I would like to do is, because I did not, and I should have, and I want to thank Alan Davis for your service to our country. I really appreciate that. Where are you?
I think he had to go
I think-
do
I
something
don't
with
think
his
he's here.
family or something.
Okay, because we have two folks that have, applicants that have served our country, and I just want to make sure that they are recognized for that. All right, so then we're to the deliberation of candidates. At this point, do we make a motion to go into deliberations because we're making a motion to select a possible mayor, or do we just talk openly? Because normally that's part of the discussion.
I think you should talk openly first about your thoughts on each of the candidates respectfully, and then the deliberations then will drive you towards somebody making a motion.
I might mention, clarification too, in the previous meeting, we didn't spend a ton of time on it, and we don't have that here for you, but we had suggested there were two ways to do this. One was to have the categories and then have a numeric system, and from our understanding, you chose not to do that, and that you wanted to discuss it in open meeting, your options, and then make a motion. So if you get to a point where you want to do something different, you can do that as well. It was fairly open, the direction that you gave, and that was you wanted to, among the council in an open meeting, discuss the candidates and perhaps make a decision.
So who would like to start?
I'll do it. Okay. Here's the notes I took on the three candidates, because I think it's very important to be able to compare them and what I saw tonight and heard tonight. I think we have three applicants who, in their own way, have qualities and qualifications that would serve the city very well. I don't have any question in my mind that all candidates who spoke to us tonight, applicants, candidates, what's the proper term, really believe and want to help Hayden through not only this time that we're experiencing now, but on into the healing process and into the future to get on with the city business that we have been in some way possibly sidetracked from. But the idea here is to find somebody who will get us back on track to do what we were elected to do. Again, I think this is going to be just my initial comment and let everybody else make their initial comments before I really go into who and what or why. But I do have kind of a, if you want to score it, a first, second, third choice based on what I have seen and heard here tonight. Again, three very genuine people who care about this community, and whatever the decision is, it's going to be very difficult, and not a comment on anybody's person themselves, but just I think the person that we hope will lead us into the future best. Next.
Who would like to be next?
Go ahead.
I agree. It's you know, I don't really know these folks that well other than meetings like this, so it was good to go through the process. I sometimes ask myself why in the heck they'd want to be the mayor here, but you know, thank you very much for putting in for it. I think there's a lot of healing that needs to happen. One of my biggest concerns is we're going to have a lot of growth issues. We're going to have a lot of applications for subdivisions, et cetera, business. It's important that they understand what that involves. And you know, a year and a half in this position, I don't know that you can understand it because I was on P&Z for 3 years. And had I not had a good mentor, it's tough. It's tough. You know, that's government's finest hour is when they say a lot but don't say anything, you know? So to get in and understand it all is really tough, really tough. So I'm still going over my notes. I took about 4 pages of notes per candidate, so I'm still kind of looking at those, so.
I'd just like to ask the question, can we have 3 mayors?
I think one's enough.
It might take 3 to keep all of you guys in line.
Touche.
You break a tie with 3?
I'm just grateful to these 3 gentlemen for stepping up, and it's a tough job that they're volunteering for, and it's going to be a tough decision. I'm looking over my notes as well, but I just want to say thank you again, and I'm very impressed.
Well, I think we got some really quality folks that have stepped forward, and that was what I was hoping for, that we would have a good pool, and we got it. And I appreciate putting yourself out in the spotlight like you just did. And you got the press here, you got videos, and to be able to deal with the tough questions, that's not easy. And not a lot of people can do that. I think that we have 3 candidates that have proven to me that they are able to, in public, stand up and say who they are and what they're about. And that's, I see that. I see a lot of genuineness in what how they've described themselves. The other thing that is highlighted for me is the amount of education. We got undergraduate and master's degree folks here. This is a great pool. I mean, that education is critical in understanding complex problems, which Brett, I don't know if people know this, but he has a law degree, our city administrator. He's one sharp cookie. We need people like that to handle the issues that come before our city. And there's so many, and he's the hub. I've said it before. He's the hub of all the spokes that have to deal with all the issues, and he does a great job. So we need a mayor that understands these complex issues. There's, the tax issues, how to pay for things, where does money come from? We have to balance budgets. There's a lot of financial information that is required that you understand, and it's not your typical balance sheet and income statements that would normally be for an entrepreneur. This is, the government accounting is a whole different ballgame. I see leadership in all three. They've held leadership positions. They've held, they've dealt with complex issue with people and trying to make it all work. They've all been in those positions. I do see one that has studied a lot about our comp plan, which is really critical because where do we go in the future? How do we plan? We have some folks that are business owners, and I think that's important. One of the things that I did look at, it's right out of their application, it's not subjective, it's purely objective, is, we have one candidate that's been here for 2.5 years. We have one that's been here for 10 years, and we have one that's been here for 30 years, or 31 years. And I think that's a factor in deciding who has the best understanding of the needs of our town and where it's been and where we're going. So I think that's a big factor in my decision also. So those are the things right now that I'm rolling around in my brain that I wanted to share. And again, I want to thank all three because it's tough what you just did. And it will be tough, yeah, to sit down and herd cats, And I'm going to talk about staff, okay?
Sometimes we are.
If you've ever heard that term, you know what I mean, okay? But that's where I'm at right now. It's not easy to make this decision, but these are some of the things that are rolling around my head. So does anybody else want to share? Jed, you got a gazillion notes. Do you want to go deeper, or what would you like to do?
Well, it sounds like someone's going to have to start the whole actual process here, and again, it's very difficult, and I think everybody's trying to avoid it, to be honest with you. Okay, but, and it is tough. The two of you are here, and Mr. Davis, who had family issues, I guess. Man.
They should do strengths and weaknesses of each before they...
I'm going to touch on the residency, okay? I moved here in 1994. I've been here 28 years, and some people don't consider me a native, local, or whatever it is, and I get it, okay? But it is important. The longer you live here, the more you experience the life, the lifestyle, the people, the needs of the people, and what's really going on, and you have a frame of reference from then to now and how things have changed, the almost exponential acceleration of what's gone on the last 3, 4, 5 years, 2 years, that type of thing. And I really feel that frame of reference is very important to what's happening today. Mr. Forcell did demonstrate a very high level of awareness. I've seen him at the meetings. He could make a comment on the capital improvement plan. He could talk about the budget. He has numbers that has demonstrated to me that he has really done his homework. And after living here 30 years, I feel it's very indicative of his awareness of the city. His leadership experience with the Bureau of Land Management is impressive. Something that I've always talked about, anybody who's known me or whatever, is communication is key to everything, regardless of what it is. And you have to be able to, when you have issues, you have to be able to sit down and talk about them and deal with them. And yeah, sometimes you're not going to be happy. Sometimes other people aren't going to be happy. But the bottom line here is the need to sit down and say what is best for the city and the people of the city. He's right. We are probably going to have to go to the people, because that's the only way to do it, is to go to the people with all of the issues that we have, funding issues related to every issue we're dealing with. And let the people make those choices. So I guess I'm going to start off by saying if I had to start this process right now, I would say that Mr. Forcell is probably, I feel, very qualified for the position. If that's
May I
where we
make a
want to be.
suggestion?
That's where we
And you
want
were
to go.
starting to go that way. One way to work through this is you could work through the strengths and weaknesses of what you heard by the candidates or the strengths of the candidates, and you kind of were doing that and hearing that from each, just as if you're looking for a way to move forward.
Narrow it.
Strengths and weaknesses of the different issues and things that you heard.
Who would like to be next?
I went first last time, your turn.
Oh, okay. You're going to be like that. Okay. I see. This is really hard because we're looking at strengths and weaknesses, and I saw very few weaknesses. So I can't pick on anything like that. I think in all of our candidates, I see leadership potential. I mean, I see strong leadership, not just potential. I see experience in our city, an investment. I believe they're all homeowners, they live here, their lives are here, and I think for some of the same reasons that, let's see, this is hard, they're all good. Okay, so I really liked Mr. Cosby's experience in a lot of different areas. I see communications, I see that he's led different groups. I liked his emphasis on safe growth. I think that's a term we haven't heard before. We've heard responsible growth and other things over and over, but safe growth is a new one. I like that. Because we do have safety issues and we do have a need for our police force. I like that he finishes the job when it's finished, and I appreciate his honesty. I'm leaning though towards Mr. Forcell due to the fact of how long he's lived here. I've seen his investment in time in different issues that we've had. So that's the direction I'm leaning. Yeah. That's all. Okay, who's next?
Councilmember Satterfield.
You know, as everybody stated, you guys are probably overqualified. You know? But some of the things I look at is while education is important, so is experience. And the experience, I guess, it is an issue to a certain point on how long you've lived here. That's important. But I also look at when did you get involved since you lived here? Did you get involved yesterday? Did you get involved 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Because that shows me what kind of involvement or what kind of effort you're going to put towards our city. I also mentioned that knowing the comp plan is very important because we have a lot of issues coming up that unfortunately is not going to give the new mayor a whole lot of time to get up to speed on. So they have to be knowledgeable about that. Mr. Forcell is knowledgeable, not to say you aren't, but I'm looking in involvement and stuff. But I'm looking at Alan Davis because of his 6 years on P&Z. He got involved in soccer and everything, or I shouldn't say everything, but got involved with soccer in the community. And maybe being a soccer coach isn't a big deal, but unless you've been a coach, it is a big deal, you know, and dealing with the parents. I did it for many years. I can't think of a better way to get experience on how to solve problems, how to bring people together, because they can be just awful. So that's where I go when I look at experience and stuff. He's a business owner. I think that's important because I think he can relate to what businesses are looking for. Mr. Purcell mentioned about going out and talking to the businesses when they locate here. I've tried to do my best in doing that, and he's right. They like the city of Hayden because the city of Hayden cares whether they come here or not. And I think that's important. And I think when you have a business owner, he can portray that or put that out better because he is a business owner. So I think that's important as well. You know, all of them talked about communication, and huge, absolutely huge. And kudos to all of you for thinking of it and coming up with it. It's huge. But I think with everything facing us, we need to appoint a mayor that's going to be up to speed quickly, knows the system, knows how things work, if you will. And that's why I'm looking at Alan Davis, because I think he fits that mold better. And I agree with Councilmember White. It is too bad we can't pick 3 mayors, but they have 3 county commissioners, so, you know.
Well, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, I know. Been there, done that for 28 years. So anyway, that's who I'm leaning forward or towards.
Well, some of the things that really stood out to me is we have improvements we have to do to intersections. We've all heard that, okay? And that means acquiring right-of-way. That means somebody that can negotiate with property owners or can be part of the negotiation of property owners, although we do hire consultants to help us acquire right-of-ways. Knowing that we have those obstacles of how to improve these intersections, and the big part of that is acquiring right-of-way. I do like the background of Mr. Forcell because he has worked in very complex situations, from what I've heard tonight, bringing separate businesses together and making a complex problem coming to a decision. To me, that, because we're selecting somebody for the next 18 months roughly that will fulfill the term as an interim mayor, and it would be really nice to have that quality, selecting that quality of somebody that can help us here in the near future. I do like the idea that Alan Davis has been on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the number of years that he has. And now he is now the chairman of it. And I think he may have been elected, I don't know if he was elected, but he's now the chairman for maybe 6 months or so. He's shown that he's put commitment to serve the city of Hayden. I do like Mr. Forcell's in-depth study that he has done into the comp plan. That comp plan has caused a lot of misunderstanding because people didn't understand it. I didn't understand a lot of it. It was a lot of new things, and he has taken the time to understand it, and I think that gives a jump start that Roger's talking about that is needed to have somebody on board that hits the ground running, in other words. Also, I've looked at Mr. Forsell's resume, and he has a background in recreational properties or coastal development or collaboration to develop or work parks and so forth together. And we have an issue right now with Honeysuckle Beach, which would be valuable because he has that knowledge to bring people together. And that's a multi-jurisdictional issue because it involves Fish and Game and county and the city and the Hayden Lake Watershed District. And that is a special talent to be able to collaborate and bring all those different entities together. And so for those reasons, my vote would be for Mr. Forsell. And so then I would make a motion that Mr. Forsell be our next, well, he would be our interim mayor. And that's my motion.
I second that.
Discussion.
Yeah, I'll go in here. Again, this is an unbelievably difficult decision. And Mr. Davis does have that experience with planning and zoning. And he does have a good understanding of the comprehensive plan to some degree, and especially as it relates to probably the land use issues. And when I compare the interviews tonight and the presentation, the ability to express knowledge, background, experience in all phases of that we're looking at. I have to basically just say that, what I saw tonight was impressed me to the point where I feel that Mr. Forsell does have the ability to probably jump in and not only lead the meetings initially and the like, but has the time. He's retired, been here again 30 years, and I have the belief, the faith, that he will spend the time necessary to get himself up to speed. Boy, I would not want to be an HR person or someone who does a lot of hiring, to be honest, where you have to make this decision often. When you have people who have qualities and qualifications, and you have to basically say yes or no, this way or that way. So again, I just need to add that in.
Thank you. More discussion? Hearing no more discussion, we can then have a roll call vote, please. Clerk.
Councilmember White?
Yes, aye.
Councilmember Satterfield?
No.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
Council President Roeder?
Yes. So I guess with
Now the
that,
crowd can clap.
I want to clap for the crowd. You guys are great. And thank you, Ken. candidates. So we should ask the question about there's going to be a formal appointment of the mayor. Do we need to select a date to do that? And when's the parade?
So you can do a formal swearing in at your next council meeting.
Okay, so
That on the
then,
agenda.
do I need to make a motion to do that? Or do we just?
No, we could just put it on the agenda.
Okay.
And is Hayden Days coming up? When is Hayden Days?
When is Hayden Day, she said. For the parade.
It's not till July.
Can I make another comment before we adjourn?
Related to this process?
Yeah, related to this process, related to what we just experienced, I guess you could say.
Is it positive?
Huh?
Is it a positive comment?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Me? Are you serious? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We've all been through the experience since February 22nd, I guess it is, and it has not been pleasant. Okay? I hope with all of my heart, and I pray, I don't pray, I have conversations, okay, almost constant of late, about the right thing to do and how to do it. And the experiences that we've all gone through the last whatever it's been, I pray that we can put what has gone on behind us. All of the other things that are going on underneath and in the background and stuff like that. Let's move on and do the business of the people and avoid the divisiveness, avoid all of the negative issues, and please move forward. End of statement.
I would like to add something too. Many of you know, or maybe you don't know, that the last 6 months of my life has been very difficult. My wife almost died. She's had 5 procedures at 3 different hospitals, has to have another one next week. My daughter and my wife are going to the same cancer center having chemo. I've been under a lot of pressure, and I want to apologize to anybody that, and including council members or staff or anybody that I have offended. It's a very difficult time in my life, and I'm sorry. And I too want to see peace. It's not been easy. You lose your spouse, almost lose your spouse of 40-some years. It's hard. I'm sorry.
We appreciate you stepping up. I mean, during this most difficult time, you did not need to step up like you did. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, do we have a motion?
I have one more comment.
Oh, sorry.
Let me say something. I would like to apologize to Councilmember Satterfield for comments I made about bias earlier tonight. I regret saying that, and I look forward to working together with you, and I would like to apologize for that sour note in the evening.
I appreciate that, but I don't take things too personal.
Thank you.
And, you know, I've got a thick skin of working in government for 42 years.
Thank you, sir.
I did not take offense,
Thank you.
but thank you.
So do I have a motion to adjourn, and this feels good?
So motion.
All right, we're done. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this process.
You drank?